Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, the Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of three amazing kids.
And I'm Omari Sankofa II, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. Make sure you are listening to Wes and Blake Silverman on the Pin Down over on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel, as well as reading Omari Sankofa II and today's guest on the Detroit Free Press, as well as subscribing for free to the Motor City Hoops Substack. But today we are joined by probably our favorite guest and probably our most consistent guest. I would venture to say that Shawn has been the guy that has joined us the most during the 200 plus episodes of the Pistons Pulse. From the Detroit Free Press, Shawn Windsor. Shawn, before we get into Detroit Pistons basketball, do we want to talk Detroit Lions football, Michigan, any other sports we need to get out of the way before we talk Pistons?
No. Let's get into the Pistons.
Oh, okay.
Folks are here for basketball. If you want to talk football later on, that's cool. I mean, you're probably a Mahomes guy, right? Where you live?
I am, but I literally, O2, you can attest, I do not say anything about the games before or after, win or lose, right?
He was stuck a Go Lions in there the other week, which I think was his reverse jinx, actually, in hindsight. But he has dialed it back. He has not leaned into the Chiefs fandom too much at all. I got to give him credit.
I refuse to do it on the podcast. So let's talk Pistons. So let's start here, Shawn. I want to take the mile high view, the whatever you want to call it. This team is 2-2 after 4 games. Unfortunately, as we record, we're coming off the not so great performance against the Cavs, but let's put that aside. Specifically, what are your thoughts right now on this team? Just general thoughts before we get in specifically to specific players, stats, offense, defense, anything like that.
General thoughts. I mean, the most obvious one is the spacing is not the same as a year ago, and that's led to Cade Cunningham's turnover issues. I think you could probably say there's some chemistry things there, right? Because the roster is a little bit different. I guess here's my main big takeaway. Last year, the roster was in a much better shape to absorb the loss of Jaden Ivey. It is not this year. And then they went out at the deadline, of course, and helped even more when they got Dennis Schroeder. So, to me, that's the single biggest thing. They're not in the position to absorb his loss in the same way, and I think that's showing. The other takeaway is, I think they learned a little bit of a lesson at Chicago. Right? They did not bring it They eventually did, and they tied it up, and that was impressive. And Chicago, by the way, has looked decent since then.
Yeah,
3-0.
You know what I mean? So I think that was encouraging that they came back. Chicago's got a lot of length, and I'm not saying they're going to be some lockdown defensive team, but they're, that bothered them a little bit. When the focus is there from the jump, as it was, I thought, against Houston in particular, and even Boston. I know they got down, but to me that was more shot making or the lack of shot making. But those are my two biggest takeaways. They got some spacing issues. It's a little too soon to judge because we want to see this this roster healthy. It's not just Ivy they're missing. Obviously, they're missing Sasser and then LeVert. And then can they focus and bring it like they need to, because their margin for error is not that thin or not that big.
Real quick, O2, just to highlight the injury stuff. It is Jaden Ivey. Obviously, everybody knew that, reevaluated. But also, Marcus Sasser has not been available in these first 4 games. And Karis LeVert has only played 1 of those 4 games. So to Shawn's point, not only was this roster not necessarily as equipped to deal with a absence of Jaden Ivey, even the players who may have helped to deal with the absence of Jaden Ivey have not been available in Karis LeVert, Marcus Sasser, as much as I love Dennis Jenkins. So I think it's important to note that as well, O2.
Yeah, it feels like the offense just feels cramped. Some of that spacing, some of that's also because they really only have 2 ball handlers right now between Cade and Asar. And I do think Asar, like from game 1 to game 3, improved a lot in that area. And then game 4, everybody kind of didn't show up in that one. But Shawn, I thought you raised a good point that J.I. was set up to be a linchpin in the rotation this season. You look at what they lost, obviously, with Dennis Schroeder and Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley. And it's okay. Well, J.I. shot 40% from three. He could obviously handle the ball. And then Karras comes in and gives you some bar handling and dunk. It gives you some shooting, and you're kind of dividing that across, J.I. and two other players, and you lose a lot of that. So it's just some chemistry things, some timing, some rhythm things. The offense has been kind of start and stop. Last night, third game in 4 nights back to back. Like you're going to have some of those, but overall, I agree that we've seen these issues kind of rear their head. Shawn, just going into this game Wednesday against Orlando, what are some areas you think they could fix, even without getting healthier? Right, like you may not have Sass, you may not have Karras, but what stood out as far as what they should just be executing this better, and it's not a roster issue?
I mean, Cunningham's not getting a lot of great looks, but he's got to be a little bit more efficient when he does get the looks. I mean, what was he, 1 for 10 in the first half against Cleveland? I think he's shooting 26% overall from three and it's just 4 games, and like in the mid-30s somewhere from the field. I mean, that's just both of those numbers have obviously got to get a lot better. That's not all his fault, but there's something that's, I don't know if he's just trying to fill out with a couple of new guys, or not, but I don't know if he's feeling a little bit of pressure because of the expectation, that he's got to take another leap. I'm not entirely sure. He talked about it a little bit the other night, right, Omari, that he knows he's got to be better. But look, it's not all just spacing. There's some good examples. He had two turnovers in the first quarter against Cleveland. One was to Jalen Duren, where he did a little shovel pass, but it had too much velocity on it. Now, admittedly, it was tight in there, but he can make a better pass than that, or not make the pass. And then 2, he went down and drew had a charge on him again, because I felt like he didn't go with a plan, and I think that's part of it. Maybe that's not all him, but what do you guys think? I see he's hesitant, or he's not quite sure what he's doing when he's going down there, and I think that's leading to some of these turnovers.
So I think the one you bring up, the charge, I think is both, because some people would say, well, that's bad spacing. And we would agree, because that charge was taken by Donovan Mitchell, who was helping off strong side corner because he didn't respect the Asar in the corner. The problem is, Shawn, to your point, you still can't just run over Donovan Mitchell. Like, you have to stop and elevate and hit the little jumper off the backboard, or you have to kick to Asar and hope he can attack into the little 10 to 12 footer. It's not ideal. I think we would all agree with that, right? We would all agree that somebody able to help off strong side corner that far is very less than ideal, but it doesn't excuse still running the guy over and it ending up in a turnover and a foul. And I agree with you. I think I've made notes in multiple games now that I feel like he's trying to force feed Jalen Duren, or he's trying to force feed Isaiah Stewart, and it's causing him to make bad decisions instead of just kind of reading the floor and taking what's there. And I wonder if it's a lack of chemistry, maybe, Shawn, a lack of trust, where last year that was Tim Hardaway Jr., that was Malik Beasley, that was guys he really trusted to make shots, and maybe he's just not trusting them to make those right now, so he's not making that pass. I don't know, but I would agree with you that right now he looks, I don't want to say confused, because I don't think Cade Cunningham gets confused, but he doesn't look like he's just fully it's like a quarterback who doesn't trust his offensive line, right? You could be an elite quarterback, but if you don't trust your offensive line, all of a sudden your decision making is a little bit off. That's how I feel about Cade right now. Does that make sense, Shawn? Would you agree with that?
No, completely. I thought part of the reason the game, I mean, I know there were lots of reasons the game switched in Chicago, and Ron Holland had a lot to do with that. Isaiah Stewart, obviously, too. But if you watch the way Cade moved and dribbled when he decided he was going to go somewhere, I felt like there was a lot more clarity and purpose and zip to the way he was moving as that game went on. And I saw that again in Houston. But then, who knows? Obviously in Houston, they started doubling him, right, in the second half. And that really affected him clearly. And then with Boston, and this is, I think, just a league-wide thing, and I saw a really interesting piece on this the other day, because Oklahoma City does this and because Indiana does this to some degree, they pick up 90 feet, the lead ball handler, and both those teams were in the finals, right? Copycat league. I mean, it's not just the NFL. I think that's wearing on a little bit too. Their face guard, I mean, a lot of times he's not even catching the ball trying to get in bounds, right? He's not just being able to come up with that kind of cool, I don't mean nonchalant, I just mean, he's got a low-key swag about him. And he hadn't been able to walk up with that rhythm. And I think that's probably affecting him too, slightly.
Real quick, O2, OG, unnamed YouTube user, you won't know what team is until 20, 30 games in. I agree with this. I think we all agree with this. At the end of the day, though, we have 4 data points right now, and so we're going to talk about
to an extent.
we do have some preseason.
Or until they're healthy. Can we say
this? Until they're healthy,
yeah. So I don't think any of us are like, oh my gosh, Cade Cunningham is cooked, or this is a big picture issue, or anything like that. It's just through 4 games, this is the things we're seeing. And then at Pistons Fan 11 says, are they taking questions tonight?
We're always taking questions.
Always taking questions. It makes our life a whole lot easier whenever you ask questions, because you drive the content of the show. We may wait until a little bit later, but Cade has been seeing playoff level attention in first 4 games. I think that was unexpected, but that is part of it, right? Whenever you come back and you're the man, O2, not only are you the top of the scouting report, it's like highlighted, underlined, starred, all of that stuff. And teams are designing these scouting reports to stop him.
And also, when you go through a playoff series, you're taking notes on what the Knicks are doing too, right? And and I think the Bucks kind of been out, really, for Cade's career, it's just blitz him as much as you can, stop him from getting comfortable. And there are going to be some lackadaisical passes. He may struggle to get to his shots, especially if the court's not spaced as it should be. And we're seeing that applied, pretty fiercely this season too. But another aspect of that is K has also just been known to get off to slow starts. And he did not do that in preseason. He was clearly the best player on the floor whenever he played in preseason. So 4 games, it's a small sample size. You don't want to say he's getting off to a slow start or whatnot, but that also has been a pattern too. And then by the time you get to game 10, it's a completely different story.
All right, Shawn, before we move on to some other players, I'm going to read off Cade's numbers, and just if you have any final thoughts on him specifically, not that we can't bring him up again, but I do want to talk about, Ron, Asar, Duran, Stu, some other guys. So Cade is right now at 20 points on 36% from the field, 27% from 3, taking 6.5 a game, 79% of the line, getting there 7 times a game, 5.5 rebounds, a little under 8 assists, 0.3 steals, 0.8 blocks, 5.5 turnovers. Now that stats tell the whole story. Obviously, we've all watched every second of the actual games, but do any of those numbers stand out to you in any sort of way as we kind of finish off and put a bow here on the Cade Cunningham specific conversation?
Well, I mean, obviously the scoring is down 6 points or so from a year ago, but it's the shooting percentages. Both of those last year were about 10% better, right? He was in the mid 40s from the field and in the mid 30s from 3. And again, it's not just his doing. One of the listeners brought up the Knicks playoffs, and yes, he was guarded like this. And I remember Omari and I talking, and when we were in New York and Little Caesars last year during that series, they needed another ball. I mean, they had better spacing. Beasley didn't shoot at all. I mean, he didn't shoot very well at all in that series, right? Hardaway was kind of up and down, but they needed another playmaker. Thompson was not really in that role that he is right now, and obviously they could have used Ivy, and so I think that's a little bit why right now looks somewhat like the playoffs. But they've found ways. They did have some shooting that got going enough to win 2 games, and Cunningham had a couple of games. But I think he'll find his way. He's smart, right? He'll figure it out. He's a very, very cerebral player, and I don't mean to say that just because he's not jumping out of the gym. We often say that as kind of a pejorative, but he's both, because I think he's sneaky athletic that's another pejorative. Sorry, he's athletic in his own way too, right? I think he's going to figure it out, and I think the shot will be there. Everything is contested. Yeah. It's really, really contested.
All right, let's move to a younger player on the roster, Ron Holland. For me, Shawn, I feel like every game is a little bit of a roller coaster with Ron Holland. He may come in and turn it over twice and foul twice, and then you don't really notice him. And then he'll come out in the second half and he bangs a 3, gets a steal, transition bucket. At the end of the day, you're going to know that Ron Holland is on the floor because he's going to contribute in some way. Sometimes that can be negative. Sometimes it's very positive. Right now, he is averaging 12 points a game, 46% from the field, taking 4 threes a game at 31%. While 31% is nothing to write home about, like 4 attempts up over 30, we're getting close to something that seems reasonable in terms of a second-year jump for him from the 3-point line. Anything that has stood out to
85% at the line too.
Yeah. It has been a good free throw shooter at different points. What stood out to you most about Ron Holland through 4 games?
A couple of thoughts on him. First of all, the shot looks good, right? Yes. It does, and when he shoots it, he's not hesitating. However, he's sometimes hesitating to shoot, if that makes any sense. And he did the other day against Boston. And I don't know if Omari heard this. You were probably actually closer because I think he passed. I'm trying to remember which end of the floor he was. He passed open a 3. And I remember turning to somebody sitting next to me. It's like, he's got to take that shot down the court. You could hear Bickerstaff yell out, "Shoot the ball!" Right? I mean, it's funny because you hear that from high school all the way up to the NBA. But so that he's obviously a lot more comfortable shooting it. You can still see he's trying to find his way. He wants to make sure everybody else gets theirs. He doesn't want to be a shot hog or anything like that. But so that's one thing. Here's the other thing, though. He just looks better and more impactful all the way around. And you asked me at the top of the show just observations about this team. His play, and I know we're going to get to Thompson along with, I think Thompson looks unbelievable right now. And those two, at least for me, if you can imagine either Ivy or some other 2-guard, along with assuming Cade keeps getting better, you can see the core something really, really special. That's probably my biggest takeaway. I should have said that at the top of the show. And that's because of Holland and Thompson. You can see if that 31 gets to 36, 37, those two are your starting. Those are going to be your starters at some point, right? Probably not this year, but maybe as soon as next year. We'll see.
O2, your thoughts on Ron through 4 games?
Yeah, I mean, I think roller coaster is a good word. No matter what Ron does, he's doing it at 100 miles per hour. And generally it works out to a positive more than a negative. But, the path to get there could be a little rocky. But I like how he shot the ball. He shot it very confidently. I actually was surprised it was only 31%. I would have guessed it was closer to 34 or 35 because, he's knocked down some key ones. But that's the good, despite the 3-point percentage not being super high, he's still 46% overall, which means he's still been great at the rim as he was last season. I think he's kept his head up and tried to make plays. He's got a couple of assists, about the same amount of turnovers. But again, I think you're seeing just the process aspect of it with him. Like that's what he wants to do. And he's at least seeing some of those reads, even if the pass isn't quite there. 2 steals. I feel like he's maximizing his 21 minutes almost all of the time. You notice him out there, and this seems to have some cold starts too. And then you put him in there with Asar and Beef Stew, and you get some stops, and that's kind of perked him up. So he's essentially done what he's done last year, but I think you can see his skill level coming along as well with that.
01 says, hello, Omari, Bryce, Shawn, and Wes. Sorry, lifing has made me AWOL. Happy to listen live for a change. And unnamed YouTube user backs it up with, we need another 01 episode soon. It was a cool episode. I agree. And Chuck says there are more highs and less lows in his roller coaster, not looking lost like he did some nights last year. I think I agree with that, Chuck, especially with there being more highs. I do. Yeah. I'm pretty critical with some of the nuance and minutia on a basketball floor. Like every game I've made note that Ron misses a weak side box out, and that those little things really bother me. And so I think I'm still clinging on to those type of things, but I would definitely agree. The highs are definitely more often than what we saw last year. And I'll just make note, 3-point shooting this year. He was 1 of 4 against Chicago, 2 of 5 against Houston, then went 0 of 4 against Boston, came back in the ugly Cleveland game and went 2 out of 3. So it will be interesting to watch that moving forward, especially out of the corner. But Shawn, I agree with you. I think it looks good. Like to me, it looks Asar's. That's a multi-year project to me. Like Asar's looks like it's gonna. There's nothing about Asar's jumper right now from the 3-point line that gives me hope. Ron's absolutely gives me hope that he's going to be a guy that can knock down mid-30s. Do you feel the same, Shawn, or do you feel a little bit differently about Asar? We can slowly start to transition into him as well.
No, I feel the same. And I go back to one of our conversations, maybe over the summer or at the end of last year, or maybe even late in the year, late in the season, where we talked about, at least this is how I feel about Asar Thompson. I felt like his summer had to be tightening the handle and finishing. And if he could add, a midi, then that's great. And I think we're seeing all three of those things. Look, he's not going to start pulling up 15 times a game from the elbow or the nail or whatever, but he can do it. He's done it, and I want to say I'm trying to remember if he did it against Cleveland, but he's done it in all three games. And the finishing is better. The finishing still has a ways to go, I think, but it's better. He's shooting 57% from the floor right now, and his playmaking is a long way. But I think it starts with the handle. I asked Tobias Harris the other night if he thought the handle was tighter, and he said no. He thought it was tight last year. We just didn't get to see it. And maybe that's true. It looks tighter to me. He had a move in Houston. Well, a couple times. You've seen this, right, Bryce? First of all, he's gone down into the lane. We were talking about earlier, Cade needing to have a plan. Asar doesn't need quite as much of a plan when he gets down in the lane because he can drop off from a little bit higher up in the air, right? And he's quicker when he's going down there. And we've seen a couple times him get down there and just make really easy dump offs because his vantage point is just easier. What he's seeing is a little cleaner than what Cade's seeing, right? And so that's one thing. And the other thing is that the drive in Houston, I want to say he was on the left wing, and he came in, he did a little speed dribble kind of crossover and hit. I don't think he dunked it. I think it was a layup. I think you know what I'm talking about, right?
It was a little push shot maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, but the maneuvering to get down there and the speed and the skill with the ball, I was like, okay. Yeah, I mean, again, he's probably another season or two away from where that's a constant thing all game long where the defense is just getting exhausted trying to keep him out. But you can see the beginnings of that, and I think that's really, really encouraging if you're a Pistons fan.
All right, let's go to break real quick. I don't think we want to leave Asar Thompson just left yet, 0-2. So when we get back, we'll continue on this conversation because at the very least, I don't want to leave an Asar Thompson conversation without mentioning his defense because I think we get so caught up talking about his offensive development. I want to make sure we never forget his defensive impact as well. So we'll continue on Asar Thompson right after this.
All right, we are back with segment 2. We were talking about his jumper, and then we'll get to his defense. But you're right; he has had, I feel like, a little bit of range out to about 10 feet. We've seen that with his brother too. Not to compare him, but I watched both of them, and it seems like out to 10, 14 feet. They could knock those shots down. Do you feel like at this point the 3-point shot is not as important with him, or is that still something? Okay, so
I just don't. Maybe
Yeah.
people compare him to Iguodala or whatever, Andre Iguodala, and his 3-pointer didn't come till way later in his career,
Yeah.
right? And I don't really love that comparison. I just think they're different kind of players, different kind of impact, different kind of defenders. But I just don't think it matters that much right now. I know you've got to have spacing to a degree in this league and it right now. But I also think we just watched a team win a championship and they were nowhere near one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the league, right? They did it with defense and shot making and rim protection. And yes, they do have some shooters on that team, and they got guys that can get a bucket. And that matters right now. The Pistons have one. We'll see if Ivy's a second one. Maybe Thompson will be a third one. Who knows with Holland? I don't know. I mean, who knows where all this is going? But no, I don't think his 3-point shot matters that much right now. And if the mid range keeps coming, the ball handling keeps coming, and the driving keeps coming, he's going to have how many years, Bryce, before that starts to slip? That athleticism relative to the NBA, which is in the 0.1.
Yeah, I mean,
so what are we talking about? 6 or 7 years of not, yeah. So that's a fairly good window to not worry about his 3-point shot to me.
Yeah, I think he'll be there for a little while. YouTube user asked, do you think Asar handling the ball more is contributing to the paint being packed? How can Asar get the advantage on the man guarding if they just sag off and go under every screen? I think it's exactly what we're talking about here. I think he has to lean into the 15-foot jumper. He is not this guy, so I want to be very clear. But when does Giannis become impossible to guard? It's not when he's hitting a three-pointer. It's when he's hitting the 15-foot mid-range jumper. When Giannis is hitting that along with his down. And now, again, I realize Asar is not even close. We're not even in the same stratosphere. But if he can at least dribble into a 15-foot jumper, that forces the defender to get that much closer to him and opens up the spacing and the passing angles and an ability to hesitate, make those dribble moves you were talking about earlier, and get all the way to the rim. So in my opinion, and I've, again, made multiple notes of this, I love his shot diet right now, guys. I love that he's taking all of these shots from 7 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet, 6 feet. I love it. And here's a few stats. So again, the biggest caveat of the episode, 4-game sample size. According to Basketball Reference, he's at 83% right now on field goal attempts between 0 and 3 feet. And he's 53% on field goal attempts from 3 to 10 feet. And 41% of his attempts are coming from 3 to 10 feet right now. What that tells me is he's getting to spots to be an effective basketball player in terms of scoring the basketball. We just have to see how consistent he can be making those shots moving forward. So I love all of it. 0-2. Asar Thompson left the game for a bit, ? I don't know if that's true or not. He's now questionable with an illness. Do we know if he's just sick? I guess point being, is there any sort of update leading into the Orlando game on Wednesday?
Yeah, no update yet. The team was off today, coming off the back-to-back. So, we'll be at shooting around tomorrow, and we'll ideally get a little bit more clarity on that then. But it was a few guys in that game against Cleveland that ended up not cracking 20 minutes just because of the nature of the blowout. So I wouldn't read into that as much, but we'll get some clarity tomorrow.
Okay, Shawn, let's move on to the big guys. And we can settle in on this for a little while because I think there's conversations around both of them individually. And then we had a question about the two big lineup as well. Jalen Duren, your thoughts so far on his play, just quickly reading off his numbers this year for the Pistons. 13 points, 9 rebounds, which is an interesting number, but it should be noted he's only playing 20 minutes a night so far through 4 games. I think some of that's foul trouble stuff as well.
And the ejection.
Yeah, that's right. 0.8 steals, just under 2 blocks, 2.5 turnovers. Overall thoughts on Jalen Duren, Shawn?
Can I? Do you mind if I one last quick thought?
Oh yeah, of course.
Point about Thompson.
Yes.
I would throw the Chicago game out. Like, Holland came in, was great that game. He comes in, he doesn't have to think. He just has to be Ron Holland, at least right now. Take the open shot, all that kinetic energy, do his thing. Thompson is being asked to be a secondary playmaker and ball handler. He was thinking a little bit too much in Chicago. But the next 2 games, you could see he was more comfortable. He had 19, I want to say 19 and 21 or something like that, right? Omari against Houston and then Boston, and was easily their second best player. And I know Duren was really good against Boston, but just both ends impact. Those 19 and 21 points to me, Bryce, they came easy. None of them were forced. I don't want to say he walked into it, but it was an easy flow. And I think he's going to have a lot of nights like that. That's just, again, without the deep shooting. That's the last thing I would say about Thompson. I think that's really promising.
Sure. What about Jalen Duren?
So Duren, it's interesting because I look at Duren now in the context of Isaiah Stewart arguably playing the best basketball of his career. Right? Again, 4 games. You don't want to, I mean, the shooting, he was joking with us the other night, right, Omari, about how he'd been a little limited. They weren't encouraging him to shoot so much last year, right?
No, they weren't.
They were kind of colorful in how they were describing that.
Yeah.
But when he gets his feet set, I mean,
you ever got a jumper that looks good? Like, do you ever think he shoots and I think it's like, oh yeah, that looks like it's probably going to go in?
Yeah, no, for sure. No, for sure. And it's really, and he's slowly kind of improved in this area the last 3-4 years. But the way he looks shooting the ball, maybe that's where a little bit more spacing comes. But his combination of spacing right now and defense both rim protection out and out guarding ball screens has been so good that I think that shrunk Duren a little bit. I was surprised he didn't come in against Boston, which tells you down the stretch against the Celtics, which tells you how well Duren was playing, especially offensively with all that force. Now their front line is, kind of a mess, right? So I think it's fair to point that out. But no, I like Duren. I like the way he's playing. Again, you can see the skill development offensively. The defense, let's be real, it still needs work. I mean, and the easiest way to gauge his defense is to look what the team looks like when Stewart's in his spot.
Yeah. O2, your thoughts on Duren?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I tweeted this after the Boston game. Say what you want about his defense, but there's nights like tonight show that there's a certain baseline value Duren brings that matters. And that was my takeaway from Sunday. Maybe he doesn't get up on ball screens enough sometimes and he gives up the three or this or that, but just the baseline he gives you as a lob threat, just an interior finisher in general. His rebounding, it's valuable. And he and Stu kind of impact the game in different ways. There are games where maybe the opposing team does have more size at center, and then Stu's energy kind of changes things and also we have to talk about Stu because I feel like he's been even better than he was last season. But there are just certain things Duren does that I think are hugely valuable to this team. It's just so easy to forget he's only 21 years old. And if he just gets marginally just marginal improvement on defense here and there, you've got to really like the player that he could become because it's players who could just play with that much force under the rim are not very easy to get. That's a skill set that's helped this team a lot with that gravity.
No, I completely agree with that. And by the way, he had that elbow jumper he hit the other night. That looked pretty natural.
Yeah.
You could see that becoming part of the game too, right? I would assume.
Yeah. And so I think one thing I've loved is in multiple of the games, he's made a hustle defensive disruption play. I think one of the games he had a chase down block in transition, or he had a recovery block in the half court. Those are the type of things I don't think we always saw from Jalen Duren, and I think is really impactful and something you need from a starting level center. I think some of the, as you mentioned, Shawn, the being in the right spot and the ball screen hips things drives me absolutely crazy, but he is finding more and more ways to impact the game on the defensive end. I'm really fascinated to see. I feel like they've leaned into this Jalen Duren post game in transition and stuff I'm interested to see how far he takes that, how efficient he can get with that. But I think my biggest thing is, guys, I kind of just like these two guys paired together. You know what I mean? I think if one of them wasn't there, I don't know that I would love the other one as much. But whenever they're together, and I'm not necessarily saying playing together. We'll talk about that a little bit. But it's if I can get 44 minutes of Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart, and then get my 4-minute fix of Paul Reed, because I need my 4-minute fix of Paul Reed and a single mid-range jumper and 3 deflections in 4 minutes. That's a Pistons basketball game to me. But seriously, though, I do think these guys, I think they mesh well together. Shawn, do you agree with that? Do you like just this combination they've built?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And maybe they can play together here and there, right? They have a little bit.
Yeah, so real quick, Will J says Shawn Windsor is definitely Doctor Strange on the Pistons Avengers. A ton of knowledge. I don't understand the reference, but I assume that's a compliment. So I'm curious who I am on Pistons Avengers. And then Michael, longtime listener supporter, any thoughts on the two big lineup? Small sample size, so maybe too early to analyze, but we have seen some minutes from it. Thoughts on that, Shawn, when we see Stu and Duren out there together?
For a team that needs spacing and may not get the bodies back for a while, I mean, why not try it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, really, why? I mean, you could. I don't know. There's all sorts of interesting radical lineups they could try if Stewart's going to keep making threes like this, right? They could go really big and keep Harris on the front line with him because he can shoot at least a little. And then I guess you got to figure out how the two is with Cade's in there. But maybe it's Thompson. I know that wouldn't be a lot of shooting out there. But maybe Stewart could sort of invert the floor. I don't know. I would bet they're going to try some things, right? If they're not going to get Sasser back anytime soon, And I'm not sure. Omari probably has a better feel for when that's going to happen. And let's be honest about LeVert. I've always enjoyed watching him play basketball. I like his feel. I like the way he can get buckets in a lot of different situations. But he's been in and out of a lineup for a lot of his career, and maybe that'll change this year. Maybe he'll catch a break and he'll be lucky with that. But it's probably safe to assume that they're going to have some spacing issues at least for a while. Ivy's at least another month out, right? So I'd be curious to see if he tries that a little bit more with Stewart and Duren.
So 11 minutes in 3 games. So we are talking very small sample size. They've played it in very short stretches. It does have a net rating of 7.7. Again, I realize 11 minutes isn't much, but it's really on the defensive end, actually, where the defensive rating is 96.3 with those two on the floor, a 104.0 offensive rating. But I do think Stu's resurgence in terms of being a willing and what looks like capable 3-point shooter has made it at least possible. And then Stu's versatility on the defensive end as well. I don't think it's something you're going to all of a sudden start and play a bunch of minutes and all of that, but I do think it's a lineup you can go to here and there. I will say this, and people are going to scream at me, and I want to remind them, I love Isaiah Stewart. I've defended him when the rest of the fan base hated him all of a sudden. I do think the next iteration for Stu is going to be having to prove that when he gets run off the 3-point line, he can do something then. Because if I'm a team, I'm just saying, hey, run at him really hard and see if he can attack a closeout and get downhill and finish, or take one dribble and make the next pass. So eventually, if he continues to shoot the ball this way, Stu's going to have to show that he can do those things as well. Before we get to some overall offense, defense, and questions, Shawn, is there any other player? We haven't really talked about a Duncan Robinson yet. We haven't talked about Tobias. I made the Paul Reed reference. We've seen Dennis Jenkins 3 games. We've seen Javonte Green 4 games. Chaz Lanier's played 3 of the 4 games. Shawn, in any of those players, or you can touch on a few if you want, that have stood out in a certain way, one way or the other?
I just across the board real quick. Credit to Langdon, Trajan Langdon, and JB Bickerstaff. These guys all compete, and I think that's the baseline, right? That's what they've established here, and I think every one of them gets after it. Jenkins, Lanier, you can see it with him, right? Javonte Green, it's the same, and they enjoy playing basketball, and I think that matters. Duncan Robinson's, it's interesting. It's because you're either comparing him to Hardaway or to Beasley, right? And he is, while probably if you're just in an open gym and you're talking about release to net, he's as good, if not better, shooter than either one of those guys, especially probably Hardaway. But he, you brought up stats early about how much space he's getting and so forth, and I know it's tricky because that is measured. Like, one thing that Beasley could be streaky for sure, but one thing that he could do that fit this system so well is come off the curl.
Yes.
And he was almost halfway in his jump shot before he even got the ball. I know I'm exaggerating a little bit, right? And it didn't matter if somebody was coming at him, right? I don't know how you gauge, is that contested or not contested, but he could shoot in a closet on his sides because he had a nice vertical, right? He had a high release on that vertical, and I think they're missing that right now. That to me is the biggest. When I watch Duncan and Hardaway too, a little bit, like that release up at the top of his jumper. But I just think that's what I've noticed the most with Duncan Robinson. It's not as quick, it's not as assertive. It feels like his conditions have to be a little bit more perfect than Beasley and Hardaway. And right now the conditions are much more mucky, right? They're in the mud more, and that's an issue.
And I'll also say that THJ shot them into some games that season because he would occasionally pop off for like 6 or 7 threes. And I don't know if they have that ability on the team now too.
Yeah, both of them did, didn't they? Beasley
both of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I'm waiting to pull the synergy numbers until we get a little bit larger of a sample. But if I remember correctly, when I did my dive into it this summer, it was the one metric that really stood out when you looked at Beasley's 3-point shooting versus Duncan Robinson's. And I believe it was specifically off screens. and the 3-point percentage that Beasley shot off screens last year compared to Duncan. And I'm just waiting till we get a little bit, 15, 20 games to see where Duncan's numbers end up. With that said, Wes being the man that he is, he pulled some stuff from NBA.com. This was actually Tim Hardaway Jr. 22.5% of his total 3-point attempts last year were tight or very tight recorded, and he shot 28% on those looks. Duncan Robinson this year so far, 24% of his are those, and he's shooting 17% on those looks. I think that matches the eye test as well, Shawn. I think it was just the game against Cleveland. I think he made a couple threes, if I'm not mistaken, in that game, but they were like true just catch and shoot. Like he was just standing there. He was open, no movement, catch and shoot, knock it down. And then when he was asked to do it off movement, he missed.
A couple thoughts. One, yeah. If he gets the ball on the swing, he's as good as anybody, right? He's one of the best shooters in the league. If you're having that defense try to shift that far. Here's the thing, though. Those numbers are slightly. I mean, here's the context that I would say for those numbers. Those shooting, coming off screens. And this is just again the eye test. I think there are too many times where they can't get him the ball.
Sure.
Where because he's not quick enough coming around. So you can see they want to give it to him, right? Or they're closing out. So it's like they can't get him the shot. What are his attempts, right? I mean, obviously he barely got shot off at all in Chicago. And that got better, and he talked about it. He said, hey, I wasn't myself, and good for him for saying that. And he was better in Houston. And maybe we're being a little bit too harsh on him. But the problem is we're looking at it from the lens of what we saw a year ago. And his movement isn't quite the same. He's a really good mover. He's a really smart player. He's been a good player. He's played in, obviously, a lot of higher leverage games. But it at least from what I've seen right now, it's a little bit harder in this system.
Real quick, because people are asking in the chat, I'm going to give Duncan's numbers last year. Again, I'm not going to do the comparison stuff. 175 of his attempts last season from three via synergy were true spot ups. He shot 41% on those. 91 attempts were off handoffs. He shot 36% on those. 75 of them were actually as the pick and roll ball handler. He shot 37% on those. Here's the number. Off screens, only 58% of his attempts were off screens, and he shot 28%. And then 54 of his attempts were in transition, where he shot 54% in transition. And then 22 of his attempts it labels it pick and roll man, but I assume that means he pick and popped or ghosted, and he shot 41%. So I do wonder if there's just a little bit of JB and staff kind of figuring out exactly where he wants it and all of those things, O2, right? Like just getting meshed of, okay, what actions does he want? And then also Cade and Asar, Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, setting the screens the right way. Just the little nuances of getting him comfortable with his attempts.
Yeah, there is a lot of that. And I think Duncan and JB have more or less said that over the last few weeks, that like there's always going to be a filling out process, especially when, I think you had two shooters in Beasley and THJ who had enough similarities that they just kind of naturally fit what you wanted to do. And, with Duncan, maybe it's a little bit different. He's benefited from playing next to, Jimmy Butler or, whoever else. They also have Bam, who's one of the better playmaking bigs. So I could easily see by like game 30, they figured some of that stuff out and Duncan's shooting it a lot better. But somebody just brought it up in the comments. Chuck Brewster, he's also the only shooter on the floor a lot. So, defenses are paying extra attention to him. So to me, there's also a chance that maybe when J.I. comes back and you have somebody else that's drawing the attention of defenses, just incrementally makes things a little bit easier for Duncan. But overall, I think there's a lot kind of working against those percentages right now. It's going to take some time for it to iron out.
Okay, let's go to break. We'll take our final one here. And then when we come back, let's talk just the offense and or defense just in general. Let's start offense, and we'll get thoughts on, I know we even had some questions on schematics and some things like that, but we'll talk the Pistons offense as a whole here right after this.
All right, we are back with segment 3. The Pistons are 2-2 this morning. They were the only 2-2 basketball team in the East. They were 8th. They are. I mean, it's 4 games. It means nothing. But where's just your gut with this team at now, Shawn? Like, have you seen anything in the past week that has surprised you at all, or is this pretty much about where you expected they would be given the quality of competition and the injuries they've had?
Well, for so much of what I thought this summer, it changed with the Jaden Ivey news, right
Yeah.
before the beginning of the season, and then LeVert going down and Sasser going down. So that's really skewed it, because I think those 3 players matter in a big way, especially potentially Ivy, but all of them really. I mean, maybe was Sasser going to have not a breakout year, but was he going to show? Everybody else has gotten better, just right. You were talking about Stewart even getting better. I mean, you can see that. To me, that's the main thing I would say. And maybe some don't. I mean, I'm not saying this year is going to be a throwaway. It's not. But I still think this is a 2-3 year process. Here's what I think. I think they were ahead of schedule last year, and it surprised even them a little bit. Maybe not in the locker room, but in the front office. Did they know they were going to go from 14 to 44?
No.
I don't think they did. It changed it changed the expectation and the buzz and the perception. And then they had some tough news in the offseason, right? They had one plan, and that quickly had to pivot to something else. So if I'm a fan, and I know it's not easy to do because you want to see them win every game, obviously, and you want to see them try to get past where they were a year ago and get to the second round at least. But I still look at the individual development. I still think that's the number one thing here. And I know they're probably not thinking about that in the locker room, not in the season. And they look better. Thompson looks a lot better. Holland looks better. Cade, I think, will eventually. Stewart looks better. Duren looks better, right? We haven't seen Sasser or Ivy yet. And so I think that part is encouraging. And they get healthy, with the way they compete and how physical and athletic they are. I think they got a chance to be fun. I mean, they kind of are fun in stretches right now, but to be more fun and to be really competitive. That'd be my main takeaway right now.
Yeah. So just for the people that do have, offensively, the Pistons are 27th in the NBA in offensive rating right now, only above the Pelicans, Pacers, and Mavericks, behind a team like the Wizards. But I mean,
the Mavs being dirty, not to get distracted, but that's crazy.
I mean, people
they're missing somebody. They're missing somebody too who can put the ball. Who can put the ball in the hoop?
They can dribble the basketball. I mean, people that get mad that Cade's the only ball handler in Detroit. Think about your only ball handler being an 18-year-old rookie trying to do it for your team through 4 games. That has the pressure of replacing one of the best players in the league right now, who got traded at the deadline last year. No pressure, Cooper Flag. Just be an 18-year-old phenom that is the primary creator at 6'8" and wasn't what you were billed as coming into the NBA.
Yeah.
So,
you were talking real quick. You were talking about the offense. Look, it's funny. I was watching a game with my son. There's a high school basketball coach the other day, and we weren't arguing. We were talking about maybe it was against Houston to some degree, and he wants to see Cade reject screens more at times when he feels like he has a favorable matchup, just for the space.
Sure,
because they're bringing in their head, depending on who else is out there with them, right? If they're going to hedge hard or double or just trap like they were doing in Houston. And I thought that was an interesting thought.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you guys? I mean, maybe they're gonna have to adjust, because they can't keep going or without at least trying some things, because they're not going to get those shooters back for a minute.
Yeah, no, I like that. You refuse the ball screen, and in that scenario, if the big is planning on trapping or hard hedging or whatever, he should be up aggressively on the other side of the screen. So theoretically, if you refuse and get back the other way, you've beat both of those defenders, because now he's out of position for the refusal, and now you're playing 4-on-3 in some capacity. So I like that a lot. And maybe they're still trying to figure out some of those things. I mean, it should also be noted, this team is shooting 33% from 3 overall. Their 2-point percentage is actually really bad. They're at 48% from 2. Last year, they were at 55% from 2. And this is a team that shoots a lot of 2-pointers. They were top 10 in the NBA last year. They're top 5 in the NBA this year. So I think some of this will start to, balance out. I do want to go to the other side of the floor, though, guys, because Detroit is 8th in the NBA in defensive rating right now. So while they are, 2-2, the defense with its flaws of its own, somebody mentioned the backdoor cuts, which drive me absolutely crazy as well. The defense has been good. O2, your thoughts on the defense through 4 games and what looks like maybe another top 10 performance this year?
Yeah, the defense has been far ahead of the offense. Even last night in Cleveland, the issue wasn't necessarily defense as much. I think they had Cleveland shooting like 4 for 15. But the problem is that they were like 1 for 16 or whatever at that point. They started the quarter off 0 for 15, and it doesn't matter how good your defense is if you can't score, obviously. But yeah, maybe in Chicago, they didn't quite have it. Maybe early on in Boston, they didn't quite have it, but they've been dialed in. Asar, I mean, he's been great on that end. Stu, I think, has been phenomenal on that end. The second unit, I think, has really come in and like provided a lot of disruption. Javonte Green, just in the few minutes he's played, I feel like he's like just identity wise, the hustle, the defense, like he fits what this team is about. Feels about right. We talked about this the other week. They have everything roster wise, I believe, to be a top 10 defensive team. They were that last season. I don't think they took a step back based on the roster moves this offseason. And it's the primary reason why they're 2-2. So if you can at least get that offense pretty average, then, I think that makes you feel a lot better about the rest of the season.
Real quick, Shawn, got to cut out the silly fouls. Yeah, I mean, they were 27th in the NBA in fouls per game last year at 20.7. They're at 28.3 fouls per game right now, which is 29th in the NBA.
Yeah.
And
granted, that Houston game was an outlier.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And that's what, whenever you're only 4 games in, there's always, an outlier game can really skew data. But also they're 28th in the NBA in their opponents getting to the free throw line. So, which to me, I think is a positive sign, right? Like you expect that you can get better on some of these things throughout the season, and they still are top 10 defensively in the league. Shawn, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say that, when Holland, especially when Holland and Thompson are out there together, and I'm not sure how many total minutes they've played, but you can, right, depending on who else is with them, but I would say Cade looks locked in to me defensively.
Yeah,
Whatever else you say about his issues on the other end right now, and I believe he will get there offensively, I like the way he's guarding. There's a focus to the way he's getting down and bending his knees and moving, and he looks like he's a little bit more aware on the weak side. What's happening on the weak side. He just you can feel him defensively. I feel like.
Yeah. Ryan asked about the trade exception. I don't know that we want
next
to get into
July.
That yet.
It's a full year. So
I'm
pretty sure it's that deal took place in July.
Yeah,
so,
whenever the Schroeder deal actually was, whatever, executed or went through the league office or whatever, you get a full 12 months to full calendar year, Ryan. Yep, you're right.
365.
All right, let's get to a few of these questions. Nick from Queensland, Australia, with what, Shawn, you were talking about, the roster stuff. Does Trajan need to take some heat for the moves he made in the offseason? Early days, I know. Shawn, in any quick hindsight, I know we couldn't have predicted a Jaden Ivey injury, but injuries do happen. Is there any quick, look, we talked about Duncan Robinson, like you need a movement shooter that maybe Robinson hasn't fit into yet, or is it way too early for this? And it's more of like, hey, let's let these things get figured out by the coaching staff and the players.
I think Robinson deserves some time to figure it out. The staff deserves some time to help him figure it out. I mean, when you think about Duren and the dribble handoffs in particular, I mean, Robinson can shoot off the dribble handoffs, right? We haven't seen a whole lot of that. So maybe they can figure out some angles with that. Yeah, I think he deserves a little bit more time. As far as Langdon, no. The only thing you could maybe quibble with is that LeVert has somewhat of a history of kind of being in and out of the lineup in his career. But I don't think you can say. I mean, they were counting on Ivy, and they were counting on Sasser. Sasser can put the ball in the bucket.
Yeah,
right. He can score. I mean, he can score from the mid range, the three. I mean, maybe in the lane he's not quite there yet, but he could score, and they missed that. And so I wouldn't. I think it's too soon to judge.
Yeah,
way too soon, actually.
I mean, this was a team that started 0-4 last year. Oh, this doesn't have the record. I was going to see just like where it was before they were consistently over 500. Yeah, so they were 9-15 on December 4th. They didn't get to 500 till January 6th, and then played right around 500. They're still 500 on February 3rd, and then they went on an 8-game winning streak that put them 7 games over 500, and then obviously stayed above for a while there. So I think even for me, I think there was a little bit of expectations. They just come into the season and they're rolling, right? Because of how we saw last year end, and you did have the consistency of JB and staff being back, but it is a lot of new rosters. So, yeah, let's go. It's been a long time since I've been here live. Hey guys, Rocky here from Down Under. So another listener from Australia. Will says, I think this is interesting to bring back up with Cade. What up, though? Where's the post game for Cade? Shawn, would you like to see a little bit more post up opportunities for Cade Cunningham?
Well, where would he post up? Right? I mean, that's the problem. Basically, I mean, right? If he's going to back down, I mean, he's going to get doubled, I would imagine, depending on who's on him. But no, we are missing for that a little bit. I feel like he's, and maybe it's because he just doesn't like the way he's shooting the ball right now. I feel like he's hesitating when he uses the ball screen and has a 3-point look. I mean, have you guys noticed that? He's passing up shots. There are times when he starts to drive where he wants to get all the way, where that pull up, I don't feel like the pull up is where it was last year. And obviously, I mean, he's got one of the best pull up mid range games in the game. I don't think we've seen that. I would worry more about that. I mean, I think the post up would come as the spacing gets figured out a little bit more, right? It's just awfully crowded for him to post up right now, right? To me.
Sure. Final one here, and then we can get into anything to cap things off. Did we go 4 games in a row last year without Holland or Stewart in an altercation with the entire other team? What is up with that? Yeah, things have been a little bit just kind of chill so far, 0-2.
Yeah, it's 4 games. It's 4 games. I think you got to let stuff kind of build over the course of the season.
Yeah.
Like
second time you play somebody, third time, fourth time.
Like what you say last time. Stuff like that. Yeah, we're still too early in. Let's see. Let's get to like game 20 before we say that.
Yeah.
They're also not as desperate for respect right now because
Yeah.
they earned some last year, right? So they don't feel like they have to claw for that. They're not trying to be seen in quite the same way. They want to be seen. They want to take a step, but it's not psychologically. It's not the same, right? Hey, if they go on a long losing streak, I bet we'll start seeing some.
Yeah, I love it. All right, Shawn, final thoughts here before we get out. Again, final time, 4-game sample. You've kind of given your mile high view and overall thoughts. Any final things you didn't feel like we got to, or you were able to get out here before we let you go?
No, I like the way they compete. Other than the hiccup to start the game in Chicago, I think even against Cleveland defensively they weren't. I think they held. I remember looking up and Cleveland had 52 with 3-4 minutes to go in the first half, and they finished with a flurry. But that was because the Pistons just couldn't make any shots, and you can't get your defense set at all. Right, possession after possession after possession. That's going to hurt the numbers. So I feel like the compete factor is there, other than that one hiccup, and I still think this is a core. And I know we need to say Ivy, and I need to correct Vinny Goodwell, who pointed out last year that they didn't really take off until Thompson, but that's not true. They went 4-1 or whatever it was on that West Coast trip. They started winning. Remember, Ivy hit the game winner in Sacramento. They beat the Lakers. They beat the Suns with Cunningham doing the dropping Durant, right? And I know the Suns were dysfunctional last year, but they got rolling right before Ivy got hurt, and then it took off eventually from there, right? So I feel like they got the makings of something that's really, really promising. We just need to see him healthy and get more data, and then they can tweak, and you can figure stuff out at the deadline or in the off season and go from there. But I think they're in the right way. I think the individual development should be a good sign to anybody that cares about this team.
Yeah. So coming up for Detroit, obviously on Wednesday, where most of you guys are listening. First, thank you for joining us live tonight. If you watch with us live, if you're listening after the fact, of course, we appreciate you as well. But we get a Magic game on Wednesday at home, and then another game on Peacock on Saturday night, a late one, a 9 p.m. start for me. So is that game really? Hold up.
Yeah, it's 10 p.m. Eastern. Yeah,
a home game at 10 p.m. Eastern.
That's the Mexico City guy.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. It's a home game for Detroit, but it's in Mexico City. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, what? And then Memphis on Monday. So I don't know when we will be back for sure, but it'll either be Sunday after that Mexico City game or Monday after the Memphis game. And yeah, have a little bit more data. Mr. Privy says, great analysis by the Pistons Pulse. And Shawn, we appreciate your work and dedication.
We appreciate you.
We always appreciate you guys so much. Continue to support the podcast. Make sure you support Wes and Blake over on the Pin Down on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel. Make sure you're reading everything O2 and Shawn are putting out over the Detroit Free Press. And of course, if you have it in you, go subscribe to the Motor City Hoops Substack, which is absolutely free. Okay, yeah, quick. Pistons fan said he or she did not like Peacock. I know you guys watch. Did either of you have any thoughts?
I like the NBC presentation. I know that I have the unpopular opinion of I don't think the streaming thing is that big of a deal. I think
you're young.
Yeah, I am. But here's the thing: like people say, nobody has Peacock, but I already have Peacock, so I don't know who these people who did have Peacock are. Like I had it for the Olympics. I don't know. Like Amazon Prime, like a lot of people have Amazon Prime. Like these are not niche products. Like I don't know.
I steal it from my sister-in-law. I will say this as someone who doesn't watch the games live and needs the ability to pause, fast forward, slow down because I watch on my computer and take notes. It actually was a good product. Like that functionality worked very well for me, but I know I'm very niche in that way. I don't listen to the broadcast, so I don't care. Wes said he loved the bench reporter thing. I don't know what that is, but cool. So
they had so the broadcast team was split up. They had the play-by-play guy in the middle of the on the side of the court, and then they had, I want to say, Austin Rivers. I think he was with Cleveland, and Robbie Hummels with Detroit, or maybe it was flipped. And they were listening in on the huddles, the timeouts, and then reporting what they said after the fact.
Okay.
But I would say I like Peacock too. I don't know how much college ball you guys watch, but Robbie Hummel was one of the best color guys in college basketball.
Yeah, yes, I agree with that. Yeah,
he's really enjoyable to listen to, and he's really interesting and thoughtful. And I thought he was great. And Austin Rivers wasn't bad either.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just like their approach of like just being the anti-ESPN. Like, I think it's focused on the game a lot more.
It is.
It's just, Prime, I saw a clip where Blake Griffin and Dirk and Steve Nash were, just breaking down a defensive rotation. And, I appreciate that they're bringing something new to the table. Like it's year one, so there's going to be some stuff to iron out, but I like it. I mean, I think it's fine. I'm also somebody that has not had cable in a long time, so I can't really identify with the, I just like turning on cable and being able to turn to the channel. I haven't had that in so long. So sorry guys, I'm the guy who's, the younger generation that they're like basing all this around. It's my fault.
The only thing I will say is, especially as someone who doesn't listen to the games, I did feel like they didn't show me stats very often. Like I didn't feel like they flashed up individual player stats as much as maybe other streams. So anyway, I think I'm interested to see the rest of the way, but enough on the streaming stuff. Shawn, thank you so much for joining us. As always, it's great episodes. We always get great feedback, and I'm sure we will again. And O2, take it away, my guy.
Big thanks to our audio producer, Robert Chan, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols, our executive producer, Bill Bradley, and big thanks to Wes Davenport, as always, and we'll talk to you all next week.